approaching or beyond by the time you hear this, 60 people dead, 60, approaching 600 wounded. It's like that is like a casualty list that occurs in a war zone. I guess, like me, when you watched until you couldn't take it anymore, some of the video that was played by the various networks, you could hear the rapid-fire gunshots in the background. This was not a semi-automatic weapon. This was not a non-automatic weapon. This was a fully automatic weapon of mass destruction. And any attempt to legislate against these guns will go nowhere. So again, there's I'll add a couple of comments here, but there's no point in talking about it. And I hate to have that kind of a defeatist attitude where it concerns guns in the hands of Americans, but it's just going to continue. And we say this after every mass shooting, and each mass shooting seems to get worse and worse and worse. But there is no will to stop it in this country. That's all it takes. All it takes is the will of our legislators to end this. And all these arguments that the right-wingers make about, well, when guns are outlawed, outlaws will have guns, all this other happy horse shit, it's meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. Those are distracting memes that the right-wing blockheads in this culture put out there to confuse the issue. If legislators in this country had the will to outlaw certain weapons, then the death rate from gunshot wounds would drop dramatically. So what can you say? Trump got on television this morning. Oh, by the way, this is October 2nd, 2017. And he got on television and offered his sympathy for the victims that were gunned down at the concert in Las Vegas Sunday night. Before he went on television, he tweeted his warmest condolences. I've never heard that kind of an expression. Deep condolences, sincere condolences, shocked condolences. But usually, when you use the word warmest as an adjective, you're talking about the warmest congratulations, the warmest acknowledgement of your accomplishment, the warmest condolences. I don't know. It's just he's insane. White House spokeswoman Ms. Trunchbull called the massacre a horrific tragedy. Oh, well, thank you, Ms. Trunchbull. We weren't sure what term to settle on. Thank you. Horrific tragedy. Okay. The guy who did the killing, Stephen Paddock, an old white man, well, see, again, I know that you know all that you need to know about this, or there's just no point going on. In his hotel room, Paddock left after he killed himself. They found he had at least 10 long guns. I believe they're all long guns. God only knows how many people could have been killed, which is a hell of a thing to say, but what are you going to say? And then later this morning, Trump got out there and had to read from prepared remarks. Trump is incapable of showing concern or sympathy or understanding for anybody's problems but his own. He's incapable. So obviously he had to read about how the shooting was, in his words, an act of pure evil. And then I guess he congratulated the first responders and local officials. And I didn't hear what the asshole had to say, but I'm sure somewhere in there was a line about how the first responders let him know how grateful they were that he was praising them. That's how Trump works. He offered his prayers, and he said he plans to visit Las Vegas on Wednesday. Well, that's wonderful. In his preparative remarks that somebody wrote for him, he said this: Melania and I are praying for every American who has been hurt, wounded, or lost the ones they love so dearly in this terrible, terrible attack. We pray for the entire nation to feel unity and peace. I mean, let me pause there. He and his administration are not about unity and peace. They're about disunity and setting people against each other constantly. So when I compare his prepared remarks to his unprepared remarks, what he says on an ongoing basis, it makes his prepared remarks look exactly like what they are. Just a huge bowl of bullshit. He couldn't care less. He went on to say, and we pray for the day when evil is banished. Well, part of that day will be when we get rid of people in government who promote evil. Evil takes many forms. It's not just, it doesn't just come in the shape of somebody shooting from the 32nd floor of a hotel into a crowd of 22,000 people. Evil comes when you ignore 3.5 million Americans after a hurricane, when they don't have food, water, medical supplies, communication, nothing. That's evil. It's also evil when you play word games with a young thug in North Korea who is now the head of a nuclear-armed nation. That's evil too. And it's evil when you insist that your cronies, or the people you think are your cronies in the Congress, when you insist that they write a health care law that destroys health care for millions upon millions of people and takes it away from children. That's evil. That is evil. So when Trump says, Melania and I pray for the day when evil is banished, well, you can make the argument that maybe he should go back to his quarters in the White House and start packing his bags and leave. Just leave. And, he says, when the innocent are safe from hatred and from fear. I mean, the hypocrisy in everything that this dunce said this morning in the wake of this mass killing. Everything he said just dripped with stupidity and hypocrisy and duplicity. And I don't know who Trump assumes is going to buy what he's saying and take it at face value. I would hope nobody in this country would. Even the white supremacists and the Nazis and the Klan, who love to hear him make these statements because they know how phony the statements are. And once he makes the statements, then he can go back to being a racist divider in this country. Now, of course, what he left out in his prepared statement, speaking for himself and Melania, was any reference at all to the issue of guns. Now, you know that Trump has this reputation for speculating on the motives of violence, not just speculating, but assigning motives for the various violence around the planet before any official information is confirmed. In the London subway last month, he said that was the work of, his word, a loser terrorist. Loser terrorist. And then he went on to use the attack to promote his travel ban on Muslim-majority countries. Do you think he will use this recent attack on American citizens who are listening to a concert to promote any kind of legislation against these kinds of guns? Of course not. Never happened.